soon move to the next slide. So the Every Action Counts Coalition is actually an initiative that we started. Yes, thank you. Is an initiative that we started into 2021, bringing together large digital platforms and corporations with a joint pledge to empower 1 billion people, to provide them green transparency, green actions, and we will see or we'll discuss here a few examples of how that is happening. The coalition is at the moment about 14 platforms from across the globe. It is about 2.7 billion customer base combined, so 1/3 of the global population. And the collaboration in this coalition is actually supposed to also facilitate best practice sharing, to make public some of the insights that the proponents of these solutions are gathering, and some of this work. And with the next slide, we are happy to announce also on here at COP the launch of the Green Digital Practices Guidebook of the coalition, which is showcasing a number of the case studies of the EAC members. We will dive into them in a bit. So please also feel free to download it and get in touch if you want to get involved. And with that, I would be happy to pass over to Emma. Emma is working with ACORN, a carbon credit focused subsidiary of Rabobank, focusing on smallholder farmers.
All right, thanks, Garrett. Would it make sense to stand up and organize the slides myself? All right. So thank you for having me. Like Garrett said, my name is Emma van der Ven. I represent Rabobank. I've gone one too far. Before I dive in, Rabobank is a large agricultural bank, one of the biggest globally. And one of our main issues when it comes to climate change and empowering people is the smallholder farmer community. And so looking at what smallholder farmers are facing in light of climate change, on the one hand, they see from their current practices, yields declining, soil health degrading, the nutrient diversity is lowering, and for monoculture, you have one harvest a year, which are all very pest and climate change resilient practices. Now, making that transition to more regenerative farming for the smallholders globally, especially in the global south, is a very expensive endeavor, and access to finance is limited. So what we saw as our responsibility as Rabobank is to help the farming community globally, not just the biggest farmers, but also the smallholders. And we saw that the difference between more regenerative practices like agroforestry and monoculture is that agroforestry sequesters a lot of carbon on the site next to all of the benefits you can see on the screen. And so mobilizing that additional sequestered carbon as a way to create payments for ecosystem services was one of our key points for the ACORN program. And of course, one of the main solutions to the challenge that smallholder farmers are facing in light of climate change. Now, as you can imagine, getting access to carbon payments through the voluntary carbon markets is very difficult. And so we basically took matters into our own hands and developed 3 key solutions for the problems that smallholder farmers face. So first of all, we've worked together with Plan Vivo, which is a very important certifier, ICROA accredited, who specializes in local communities and smallholder farmers. We were able to develop a global model that helps us to certify smallholders at a global scale under the ACORN umbrella. Next to that, we've developed the technology and transparency that comes from remotely sensing the yearly change in biomass. So we measure on a yearly basis on a small plot down to 1/10 of a hectare how much actual biomass has been amassed and how much carbon has been sequestered, which we can then turn into marketable credits certified through our umbrella certification and then sold through our own ecosystem. This ecosystem, as a large agricultural bank, comes natural to us because we don't just finance food and ag companies, we also finance large companies that don't have their own supply chain to use to decarbonize. So they come to us looking for solutions for their own carbon goals, and we can help them to purchase those credits, of which 80% goes back straight to that smallholder farmer. And this is why it says ecosystem and ethics, 80% of the revenue of a carbon credit going back to the farmer is unparalleled in the market, and we're actually really proud of it because of our scalable solutions that help decimate the cost of access to the market. Now, what we've done so far, it's a big world, but we've at least been able to work in many different countries. Currently, after almost 3 years of development, already 25,000 smallholder farmers in the global south are getting income from their carbon credit sales. And so a lot more farmers have been able to plant agroforestry to make that transition to regenerative agriculture, have not yet sequestered so much carbon because it takes a few years because trees need to grow. But for now, already 60,000 hectares are generating those carbon credits, for which 2 million euros have already found their way to the smallholders on the land. I'm very proud to say that we're contributing to 8 SDGs. You can see them below. I don't think that's need explanation. But the most important part is what we've been able to do is unlock access to finance for those smallholder farmers because of their future carbon revenue, diversifying their income streams through agriculture and carbon, and diversifying the agricultural yields and income as well. So this is what we've been able to do using technology, using innovative digital solutions. The one thing that we're looking for at COP27 is to collaborate with governments to make this a key solution. Oh, that is interesting. That's my profile. So I'm going to hand over to, I think, Bo. Is that the right order? Look forward to the questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Emma. Are we? Yep. Oh, I think we're.
Okay, you can operate.
Sure. This is. Yep. Okay, we can. Hi. I'm Bo Chaitan. I'm happy to represent Delivery Hero. And is there one before this one? There might not. I can. Anyways, I'm Bo Chaitan. Happy to.
Yeah. Good. So, then we start with this one. With the one with the pie chart.
Sure, I'll start here. Hi again. I'm Bo Chaitan. I'm happy to represent Delivery Hero. Happy to work with the EOC over the last year and a half. Delivery Hero is a house of brands that does food delivery. The brand of note within Egypt and the Middle East here, under our umbrella is Talabat, for those who might be familiar. And the thing I think we want to talk about today is our carbon footprinting program, and the fact that we've, over the last few years, established what we think is best in sector in terms of a carbon footprint that is not only including Scope 3, but focusing on Scope 3. And so we've engaged external partners, and we've really went hard on the books in terms of the GHG protocol to define this. And it's led to some interesting results that I think will define the framework for our climate action going forward. So, on the left here is what you see of the outcome of our 2021 footprint. Unsurprising for an organization of our size, of our nature, the predominant portion here exists within Scope 3. And, that's again, not surprising, but it does help drive where our action needs to be. And on the right-hand side, again, maybe not potentially, too surprising, but the 3 areas of focus for us exist at the intersection of packaging, tailpipe, and groceries. So, for us, this is logistics, this is single-use plastic, and this is the agricultural to customer value chain. And so, we're not the first company to do this. But again, what it has allowed us to do is quantify the area of focus. And at the bottom of the screen here, we want to identify, the research areas that we've already begun to again, quantify the impact that we can have here. So So taking a look at the total cost of ownership of transitioning a vehicle that's petrol-based to one that is EV-based in our largest markets, what that looks like now and what that could look like in the near future. Renewable electricity, we are a brand or a house of brands that operates in 70 different markets, and each one of those comes with different challenges or opportunities in terms of the access to renewable energy and the challenges that exist there, as well as the grocery emissions pathway. We're again not the biggest player in this space, but I think one of the benefits that we do have is being a quick commerce or a tech platform is that we get to iterate maybe a little bit quicker than more the traditional grocery retailers. So we've started work in that area, and it all kind of goes back to the footprint and how we focus. And we can do a lot of this work in house and put blinders on and ignore the reality that we interact with hundreds of millions of customers on an annual basis. But that I think is where we as a company really truly see the opportunity. It's engaging our customers in this journey. Again, the footprint needs to kind of govern and provide a framework to give us feedback that we're focusing in the right areas. But as we do this, we're using that science-based approach to find solutions that are scalable. They can be rolled out fast. They're locally applicable, and because again we are a customer-facing platform, they need to be affordable. They need to make sense to the customer. And so a couple of the initiatives that are worth highlighting here are a certification program that we underwent predominantly in the Asian region, where we work with the WWF to work with restaurant partners to identify operational practices that they take in their restaurants to kind of gain these different badges. And these badges can then be communicated to customers so that a customer knows that they are making a sustainable choice by ordering from a particular restaurant. A potentially simple but really effective tool that we've seen is the cutlery opt-out. So the simple toggle to ask a customer if they are willing to opt out of the cutlery in their delivery has the ability to scale up to thousands of tons of single-use plastic that's saved. And so it's initiatives like this that we're looking to continue to build and apply against that carbon footprinting framework. And yeah, I mean, as we're here at COP, I think it's a good opportunity to allow for some reflection of what we've learned along the way and where we need to go. Feedback from customers versus what actually lands is a bit of a learning. So that's a bit of an experimentation that we will continue to undergo. Test, try, fail again. Not everything will land, and some things need to be iterated, and some things straight up need to go back to the drawing board. And then end-to-end solutions aren't always necessary. I think both within our industry as well as potentially some others, there's the tendency to view sustainability initiatives as bolt-on. So things that come in after the fact that we add to an already existing process. And one of the things that we have needed to keep in mind is that it's just as much about improving the existing framework, the existing process, than it is about adding new initiatives that are outside the business already. And then call to action. Right off the top, it's not a surprise that our impact exists in scope 3, and so that quantification doesn't just allow us to understand where our opportunities are. It also gives us the identification to understand how we go about addressing them. And so scope 3 is going to require a lot of collaboration with partners upstream and downstream in our value chain. And we have to develop consistent definitions and sustainable packaging. In our sector, it kind of seems that people are kind of working on this in isolation, in silo. And I think one of the things that we hope to move forward to, both in terms of definition on sustainable packaging as well as the framework of quantification of footprinting itself, is just in standardization. So if we're all speaking the same language, then I think we can move forward together. So I'll leave it there for now, but yeah, thanks for your time. I'll hit next. Or...
Thanks a lot, Bo. And I mean, now, like in the spirit of this panel and this pavilion here also, I think we should open the discussion. So Catherine, maybe if you have already some questions, and then also afterwards asking the audience to...
Absolutely. We have quite a few experts in the room here. I think we had already started a dialogue on this earlier, but I think it's really important to understand that we have 14 members of the EAC, each with very distinct customer bases, regions, business models. How did this come together, and why were you interested in becoming involved? I think, to me, Garrett, the question is for you, how this came together, and then I'd like to hear about the rationale behind becoming involved in the EAC, because I think what we're trying to do is show the diversity, but find a way to have a common framework, a common reference point.
Yeah, no, I think like the beauty lies in the challenge, because I think something that Bo also referred to, I mean, like there's a need for more collaboration, and I mean, having that in mind, sometimes it's also easier to actually do cross-sector collaboration and like have the open sharing, like with the non-closer, I mean, like not with your competitors, but also sharing it like interregional across sectors. So I think some of the discussions will be very much more open, and that's what was our starting point. Of course, not saying that we want to stop here, but to kick it off at least. And then on the other side, yes, finding least common denominators across this very diverse group is one of our own challenges. So, I mean, whether it is about understanding better consumer preferences and consumer, how they make their choices. And I think that is something like where there still needs to be a lot of research. And that is also at the same time where digital platforms actually have the benefit of like what they have been growing from to understand and actually also to personalize services. And that is, I think, especially with something as personal as the sustainability values, is something very interesting to pick on, and maybe also interesting when you now say, Bo, the research results, the survey results, and the actual behavior is actually diverging. So, do you have any ideas like how to close this gap, or how do you do that in practice?
No, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, kind of going back to the original question about like the benefit for us joining an organization like EAC, and not to advertise the best practices documents too much here, but I think that's exactly one of the benefits that we saw is we're looking to collaborate with other companies within other sectors who've gone down maybe the similar journey and apply some of those learnings to what we do. And I think this maybe the second point is, as you alluded to, is it's understanding that other companies within the coalition exist in the same markets as we do, and so in a lot of instances, our customers are their customers, and so some of the feedback that may have already been received, both by us in the surveys that we've done or others within the coalition, that's knowledge that I think that we can share amongst ourselves to kind of say, maybe a survey on a particular sustainability topic in a particular market or a particular region is read or interpreted in a particular way, but the real life on the ground results could be different. How to close the loop on that? I mean, I think that's what we're setting ourselves up for doing in the near future here.
I think that's the age-old question. One of my masters was on mental behavior and decision-making, and that was in the 80s. Honestly, I keep hearing the same narrative around survey responses versus actual behavioral shifts, and we don't even use the term behavior anymore. It's really about making the choices, but in order for consumers and individuals to have choices, they have to be robust. They have to be informed. It has to have the information and data so that it is transparent and accessible. And I think that's where the digital comes in. But I wanted to give you a chance also to talk about what brought you to the EAC and also to speak to that individual and the customization because of your business model being quite distinct, yet still having those parameters.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a great question to ask. How can we collaborate across sectors, across solution spaces? Because the difference between our solutions is quite big because we target a completely different group, yet we can still learn a lot from each other when it comes to creating viable business models that help bring sustainability into the profitable realm. I'm a firm believer that this is the only way to drive climate change, adaptation, mitigation at scale. And so this is what every person, every company in the EAC does in a different way. So just learning from that in this sort of pre-competitive environment, I think is very healthy. And I think that is what drives innovation. It is not necessarily collaborating, but also being inspired by each other if collaboration is still too far-fetched. But like you said, Bo, I can also see that the farmers that we work with might one day become your scope 3. So knowing how we deal with that scope 3 and understanding how you deal with the customers that purchase from those farmers in the end of the chain, to both of us can be very interesting. And this is just one example. So I can go on, but I think there's many more questions.
I think it's really interesting too how many of the organizations are using different types of technologies to do carbon calculations, footprinting, etc. So the type of data that's being aggregated and used here, I think we can also think about integrative models going forward on how that how we can actually scale that up. But in your business model, you talked about scaling, but what I'm really seeing is integration. So you're using and partnering with different organizations because you have a massive customer base, very distinct demographics, shall we say, regions. And I'm wondering how does that process actually work? How do you identify the contextual solutions and then also the partners that you need in those cases?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the EAC, there was clear kind of themes defined early on in the launch of the coalition, and we saw a pretty good alignment with those themes. With the concepts we just kind of presented. So when we think about packaging, we see collaborators within the EAC that also have that challenge. They work in I want to say completely different sector, but they've got a different business and they are targeting a different audience. But their challenge there is the same as ours. And when it comes to greening logistics, this is something that I think a lot of e-commerce, both commerce and traditional are being challenged with. So those I think are the ways that we can kind of put the collaboration into context is along thematic lines. So yeah.
No, and I think like maybe not directly related, but like what we have seen now in different parts of the work that we have done out of the coalition, also looking into new topics like food, for example, recently in Brazil. I mean, that's the power of like simplifying the messaging to the consumer. So, I mean, some of the topics like carbon are very abstract and very hard to relate to. But so therefore, even like if you develop and educate about labels, I mean, labels are, I mean, what you have similar to what you have done, like with the restaurant labels. It helps the user in a very visual, a very intuitive way to say, okay, this is a good choice according to certain criteria, and it really eases also the adoption. And I think that is probably something that on quite a few more topics needs to be more explored. What is the effective level of simplification without losing then too much of the or giving away the actual decision making? So I don't know whether any one of you still has some comment on that, but
Well, I can answer that from a very specific perspective, but if you talk about labeling sustainability, this is really complex. And just talking about the carbon market, there's so many different ways of approaching the carbon accounting, just to name one tiny aspect of sustainability. And so I think having communication about that, acknowledging the different ways of defining sustainability before you start to make one uniform solution there, I think is necessary. Just a very small example, if you talk about Scope 3 accounting, you talk about the carbon emissions throughout the supply chain, which is very different from carbon accounting on, and now I work with farmers, so I experience both, in a voluntary carbon credit way. So if you talk about a voluntary carbon credit, you take that as a unit from the land, take it, sell it somewhere else as a token, and it leaves the supply chain. So talking about sustainability just in light of carbon, I think is very complex, but acknowledging that that same activity on that farm can be accounted for in a supply chain or on the voluntary carbon market, I think that's crucial. So for me, what I always say when you talk about acknowledging the value of sustainable initiatives, always keep in mind who does what on the ground. So never only focus on the carbon, but also focuses on who is generating those benefits and how can we include them in all of the benefit sharing. And I know I derailed your question a little bit, but I thought before you start talking about uniform sustainability standards, first look at what's happening to create those types of solutions.
maybe I'm not sure like whether from the audience there's like any questions or even like remarks. So happy to give anyone the chance. Probably not yet, but
I think it's a very hard environment. The sound is a bit off, so I apologize for that. But yeah, we're just asking if anyone has any comments or questions, because we actually are in a pavilion that brings together over 400 organizations around the world, the Climate Change Coalition, among other collaborators, as you can see. And what we found in the Climate Change Coalition, and GDFA is a partner in that, is that you have emerging technology, blockchain, focusing on different tools around the world that are very, as we were talking about, very contextualized, and offering subsidies to do everything from carbon market measurement to different types of funding mechanisms and whatnot. So the types of partnerships, and it's a competitive, not competitive, it's a collaborative and competitive environment. It's an enabling environment where it's not about talking about revolution. It's not talking about a sudden shift, but about using a very contextualized, very integrative models for those types of solutions. And I'm thinking about yours in particular, where you were talking about, you have a massive customer base, big customer base, and even the packaging solutions, how they might be appropriate the environment, but this also goes for the types of technologies and the data that's available. And I'm wondering how you, for example, were talking about the teams themselves and who you're partnering with in terms of build out those tools. How does the bank, how does ACORN go about actually choosing who you're partnering with and who you're actually going to be working with on the ground? And does that play a big part in the type of innovative model that you have?
I think I have to be honest, our local partners are the key solution for ACORN, because we're a Dutch bank. We don't have direct relationships with smallholder farmers on the ground. We have to acknowledge that we are very Western in our thinking, being from the Netherlands. And so we bank heavily on the expertise of our local partners. And so how we scaled up ACORN to the numbers I just mentioned is really by first finding the local partners that have healthy relationships with those farmers that have been on the ground for a long time, and then look at what they've done. How can we help scale up what they've done with a small group of farmers, and then apply those same practices, and also looking for new potential local partners who have the same ambitions but not necessarily the same experience. And so using what we've learned from this very experienced group of local partners, which are NGOs, which are farmer cooperatives, which are even large traders who purchase from those farmers, and bring that knowledge back to our new partners that we can help scale up their practices as well. That's what we're trying to do. So really share that knowledge.
And I imagine that cities play a big role in what you're doing. And how do you go about finding your city partners, or are you there yet? Is it a part of a process? Is it something that's very dynamic? How do you go about evolving your business model with the city environments themselves?
Yeah, good question. And probably early days on that. I think thinking about, how do we find our partners and whether cities play a role in that. We have an existing business kind of process, and so obviously within Delivery Hero and our brands, logistics does logistics really well, and packaging does packaging really well, and our Q-commerce team does that really well, and they've got their existing partners and their existing business models, and I think it's working with taking a look within first and understanding how is it currently working, and identifying if there's efficiencies that can be made there. And I think that's where we would lean on it, an internal logistics team to identify opportunities where cities are reaching out to us and they have a high demand on looking to enable a transition to electric vehicle mobility, for example, or ones that are maybe further down the road. So I think leaning on our subject matter experts and kind of the knowledge that we already have available, and picking that up, and then looking at where the current opportunities already lie. So.
Thanks, Garrett. I wondered if you could also just mention perhaps a few of the other EAC partners and some of the models that we're seeing that is being printed in the guidebook.
I think the sound gets really unbearable.
It's really very bad. I apologize.
Yeah.
I wondered if you could mention perhaps a few of the models that we're seeing from Ant Group, for example, or MasterCard.
Yeah.
Just mention a few of the difference to sort of explain the diversity of the different practices.
Yeah. No, so I mean, that's also the interesting part of the coalition, that we have that we are cutting across so many industries, but also regions where the context. So whether it's the economic context of the users, whether it's the pain points that the local population is feeling the most, are very different, and that drives, of course, also more from a product market fit perspective, even like what kind of sustainability solutions are actually in demand. And I mean, that was, for example, where Ant Group, or Chinese partner in the group, has been already very early on picking up on a challenge that in China there has been quite a problem also with desertification. So when they engaged the users of their financial app with sustainable behaviors like switching to public transport, choosing more environmentally friendly products, combining that with some green social currencies, and being able to use these social currencies to pay, for example, for an offset, or in their case also gamifying the tree planting. So it became really like a fun game to do or to participate in for the users, and they saw a huge adoption, and were able, over the last few years, to gather 650 million users to engage with that. So you really see that if you do it in the proper way, there's really also a big demand. And of course, each of these individual engagements is only like a starting point, because consumers are also not just engaging with it for the sake of itself. So once you engage them with one topic, you need to move on. And so that's where they're now, for example, moving on to the next topic of oceans. And similar to that, I mean, Southeast Asia, for example, has a big plastic problem in their oceans, and I mean very tourism dependent regions, for example. So plastic waste was one of the topics that Lazada, e-commerce company in Southeast Asia, had been picking up, and they are also thinking of how can we actually simplify the engagement with a topic that is maybe like not on everyone's mind. And yeah, also going there like with some very positive messaging, with labeling of products, so really making it easy to find the products that would be more appealing. And then I think at the moment it's for many of the partners also still an experimentation phase, and that is also where the experience sharing is so important, because yes, for whatever net zero and other pledges we are heading, at the moment, yeah, it is still the learning phase, and that is where a lot of awareness work needs to happen before actually the strong experiences also like with the actual action are sinking in or are being able to be shared. And that's what we are also going to focus more and more in the next months and years. So to always dig one level deeper and see that, we hopefully make sustainability a topic where every company perceives it as a topic to collaborate on, and where everyone is better off by collaborating. And then also that should be perceived or should be well received by the customers. So there's a win-win solution, and it scales faster. So.
Thank you. Yes, there's that word again, scaling. When I reflect back, when I was first working with the Green Digital Finance Alliance, it was in the early days when we examined Ant Financial. At the time, it was called Ant Financial, Ant Group. And we were trying to learnings based on the demographics of the Ant Forest app. And we actually created a number of reports that were then used to sort of make that decision of where and how to pivot business model. For example, we looked at whether it was possible to reforestation projects in Africa to support other types of business models there, or forestry projects there. We looked also into what are the demographic drivers behind this. And again, it's sort of the results were quite mixed. So it's really interesting to see that they are pivoting now into oceans. And on top of that, they're also collaborating on the entrepreneurship side and the innovation side as well to try to increase the capacity. So I think to me, the key question is about that pivoting, the learnings, the try until you succeed, and what your experience is.
Well, there's a lot of talk about this COP being the implementation COP. Are you okay? I have some water in that bag. Okay. I won't put any more attention on you. But this COP being the implementation COP, and I think that's also what Every Action Counts is really showcasing. It's not just talking about what you're going to achieve, but also looking at what has already been achieved. And so, actually, I have a question to you, Gerrit. If you look at the group of companies that's come together right now, where do you want to see that scale? Do you want to find new companies to join this group? How do you see the ambitions? Because we've just launched.
Yes, exactly. Good point. So, I mean, like for the coalition, obviously being already global, but having 14 companies, we need to grow also to develop some, I would say, critical mass, whether it's regional wise, whether it's topic wise. And that is what we are looking now, we'll be looking for. So, I mean, whether it's to get more banks, more e-commerce, or I don't know whether food delivery, but at least companies that have like some more shared topics, but also like each of these solutions that are being rolled out are of course very contextual to a local culture and local maturity. And I think that is where it's also very important that we actually need to find some champions who are taking a role, like also a leading role within this coalition in the individual topics and regions. And I think then we will get also a bit more dynamic, and I think they will create like own, very open, collaborative local ecosystems. And that is like also where, initiatives like the Climate Change Coalition also can help, who have already like 350 partners globally that are all very committed to the open source and similar topics. We should also partly learn from that, and should also, similar to trying to learn cross sector, but also on these models of how you innovate, how you engage with your customers. Yeah.
Yeah, about the transition, I'll piggyback off of what you said, Garrett, and kind of throw it back to kind of the framework of our footprint. And it's, again, not a surprise that our impact exists within Scope 3, but the message loud and clear there is that we can't do this alone, and we need to find partners all the way up and down our value chain to do that. And I think even, with the participation in the coalition thus far, and even today, we understand that there are going to be companies that need to help us in the financing of the transition to electric vehicles, for example. So it's finding those partners. And Emma, your kind of comment off the top about some of the farmers probably will exist in our value chain if they don't already. So it's identifying those synergies and kind of working together. So yeah, I think right about now it's just understanding who our Scope 3 value chain partners are and how we can work with them.
Thank you. I am losing my voice a little bit, so I apologize. I do think we can bring this to a close on this very positive note. We're talking about a network effect, about collaboration, but still about scaling the capacity of your individual organizations, your individual capacities, but as a group with the EAC and with collaborations with other network type groups like Green Digital Finance Alliance, EAC, and the Climate Change Coalition, among others. So I want to just give everyone the opportunity to say one last word, if you want it, and just tell us about your next steps for your own organizations and also what you hope to see coming out of the EAC.
I think our last word is pretty much along those same lines. Is we know where we need to go. We have the homework to show us, and direct us in the right way. It's now about finding partners that will come along with us in that journey, and taking ownership and enabling that along the way. So that's where we're headed in our short-term journey.
Well, for me, it's quite simple. I think looking at all the case studies in the guidebook, I hope 5 to 10 years from now, we'll look at that and think, this was innovative, it's the standard. So.
Very good, very good. So I think having really come to the end, just also want to say thank you. And already excited about all the different insights that we will be able to share next year, hopefully. And invite anyone who wants to get in touch, whether with us as Green Digital Finance Alliance, Every Action Counts Coalition, or Delivery Hero, ACORN. So please let us know. And I think we're very open to talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and